Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope your day and your week are off to a fantastic start. We've got a new day and a new week, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day and a new week comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I've got 4 NBA single bets to go ahead and share with you guys in tonight's NBA slate. But as a special bonus, we also have a 3-leg parlay over on FanDuel to go ahead and share with you guys in today's video. So lots and lots and lots of picks to go ahead and share with you guys in today's video. And we have absolutely no time to waste. We're not going to go ahead and repeat the mistake I made in my Super Bowl picks video, which did really well from a numbers perspective, where I rambled for 10 minutes and got about 200 hate comments, which understandable. I went way too long in that video. So I'm not going to make the same mistake here. Let's dive right into today's picks. Jumping on over to the outlier screen here, we're going to start off with the single bet. So we have 4 single bets before we move on to our 3-leg parlay to finish out today's episode. So just to reiterate one more time, these first 4 picks I'm going to share with you are the single bets. Now, of course, you can parlay them. You can do whatever you want with them. That's obviously up to you entirely. But letting you know, these first 4 picks are meant to be single bets. The other picks later on, and I'll make sure to specify when we're doing the parlay. All right, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's dive into the picks here. Our first player prop in today's slate, we're targeting the Minnesota Timberwolves, Cleveland Cavaliers game, 7 p.m. tip-off tonight. We're going Darius Garland of the Cavaliers over 27.5 points plus assists. We are grabbing this over on DraftKings for minus 120 odds, but as always, guys, make sure to go ahead and shop around for the best sportsbook odds available. All right, guys, the data on this one is pretty solid across the board here. Darius Garland has cashed this over in 8 of his last 10 games. That is an 80% hit rate, averaging 31 points plus assists per game over his last 10 games. And even when he has missed the mark over his last 10 games, have been pretty narrow misses. Like you see this game on February 2nd against the Mavericks. He finished with 17 points and 10 assists in what was a blowout win against the Mavericks. He just barely missed the mark in that game. So pretty good numbers here for Garland. If we go ahead and stretch the data out to the last 20 games, still pretty solid, 70% hit rate. 14 of his last 20 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 30.95 points plus assists per game over his last 20 games. And again, look at all these narrow misses you have here in the data. 27, 27, 27. We got a couple 25s there. So even when he misses, he's always right around this line. If you go ahead and stretch the data out even further to the entire season view, you have a 60% hit rate on this over for Garland. He's cashed it in 30 out of 50 games this year for the Cavaliers, averaging 28.58 points plus assists per game overall this season. But the good data does not stop there. We also have some pretty solid head-to-head data in this matchup. 2 of his last 3 meetings against the Minnesota Timberwolves, he's cashed the over. That's a 67% hit rate, averaging 33.33 points plus assists per game across the previous 3 meetings against the Timberwolves. They have played once this year, less than a month ago, back on January 18th. He did cash the over with 29 points and 6 assists in that game in what was a 7-point victory for the Cavaliers. This is the encouraging part about this matchup, is the fact that he cashed the over pretty convincingly the last time they played, and he could have had an even bigger game. We'll go down below to the numbers here. He had 13 potential assists against the Timberwolves in that game. He finished with 6 assists, so obviously there were plenty more opportunities for assists for Garland. He did play 33 minutes, so he could have obviously played more minutes as well. But from a field goal perspective, he took 19 shots in that game, but only hit 8 of them. 8 for 19, 42% overall from the floor. Again, not terrible shooting numbers, but not great either. So there were plenty of opportunities for Garland to go ahead and put up more stats, more production. And the fact that he still cashed the over convincingly despite only shooting 42% and leaving some potential assists on the floor there, pretty good data here for Garland. And yeah, overall, the Timberwolves are pretty solid defensive teams, even when you go ahead and narrow it down to the point guard position. 8th in points, 12th in assists to point guards. Mike Conley, no offense to him, he's a great player, but he cannot guard Garland all game long. And Anthony Edwards is going to be busy matching up with Donovan Mitchell most likely in this game. So I think Garland's got a pretty good matchup on our hands here. Like the spot for our first player prop in today's video. All right, guys, our second player prop in today's slate comes from the Pelicans. Whoops, not the Pelicans. I played the Pelicans the other night. The Kings-Mavericks game, 8:30 p.m. tip-off tonight. We're going Malik Monk of the Sacramento Kings over 30.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Pretty good value, too, getting this for almost even odds over on FanDuel, minus 102 odds. We did take this player prop on Saturday against the Pelicans, and we did miss the mark on Saturday's player prop when it comes to this line. I'm going to ride with it again because the data is still pretty solid from a recent standpoint. Now, I don't want to go ahead and keep repeating myself every time I take the Malik Monk prop, but of course, the data overall is not very good, but we have to take into consideration his role and his standing with the team is very different today than where it was even a month ago. I will show you guys the overall data. Again, it's not fantastic, just a 43% hit rate on this over for Malik Monk this year. He's cashed it in 19 out of 44 games, averaging 27.55 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over the majority of the season. So like I said, the overall data, it's not great. But remember, when Mike Brown was the head coach of this Kings team, he had a very different standing Malik Monk did. Very different minutes. He was off the bench. His role, the number of shots, everything was different. Since Mike Brown has been fired, and especially since the Kings have traded De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk has now become the de facto point guard of the Kings, and the volume is there for him to go ahead and cash this over. So if we go back and narrow the data down, let's look at the last 20 game data for Malik Monk here. A 65% hit rate over his last 20 games. He's cashed it in 13 of his last 20, averaging 31.95 points, rebounds, assists across his previous 20 games. And if you look at the last 20 game data, this basically takes you from the time that Mike Brown got fired, which is around this December 28th game against the Lakers, all the way to present date. So since Mike Brown has been fired, the numbers have been pretty decent for him. Even if we want to go ahead and narrow it further to the last 10 games, still a 60% hit rate, 6 of his last 10 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 30.3 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over his last 10 games. Now, if you do want to go ahead and narrow it down, these are the last 5 games. It is just a 40% hit rate over the last 5 games. This is basically with the last game with De'Aaron Fox and the few games without De'Aaron Fox now with LaVine. LaVine's played about 3 games, I think, so far with the Kings. If I'm not mistaken, this OKC game was the last De'Aaron Fox game. Again, I could be mistaken on that point there. But the reason why I show you guys the last 5 game data is to show you the usage rate for Malik Monk in that game, to kind of show you guys that, yes, the overall data isn't great, but the volume is certainly there for Malik Monk to go ahead and cash this over. I mean, just look at the last game. Let's just look at the last game here. 21 potential assists against the Pelicans on Saturday. Now, he only finished with 7 assists in that game, so there was a lot of opportunities for Malik Monk to go ahead and grab some extra assists. He fell short of that, but there's a lot of volume there. Okay, obviously the minutes played, he's averaging about 33 minutes per game over the last 5 games. On Saturday against the Pelicans, he played a little bit over 32 minutes in that game. The shot attempts are there. He took 14 shots against the Pelicans. The problem being he only shot 5 for 14 from the floor, just a 36% field goal percentage against Sacramento. So again, the volume is there. He's taking the shots. It's there. It just, the shots aren't falling right now, but the volume is certainly there, which obviously encourages me. He took 8 threes in that game too against the Pelicans. So the volume, again, I'll say it one more time, the volume is there. Even rebound chances. He had 9 rebound chances against the Pelicans. He only finished with 4 rebounds in that game. So yes, although you do see some red scattered throughout the last 5 games for him, the volume is certainly there. We just need him to hit a few more shots. We also have a pretty good defensive matchup on our hands here against the Dallas Mavericks versus point guards this year. They rank okay, 11th in points, 19th in rebounds, 12th in assists. But this Mavericks team right now is a bit of a mess. And Kyrie Irving, let's be honest here, offensively, he's still a solid player, but defensively, he doesn't play much defense these days. I think Malik Monk's got a pretty solid matchup on his hands here with the volume he has, with the number of shots he takes, all the opportunities for rebounds and assists. I still think it's a good line for minus 102 odds too. Really, really, really solid value here. All right, guys, our third player prop in today's slate comes from the Jazz-Lakers game, 10:30 p.m. tip-off tonight. We're going John Collins of the Utah Jazz over 24.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which we are getting available to me at minus 120 over on BetMGM. It is available on multiple sports books for varying odds. John Collins was a bit of a cash cow for us on this show last year, and he's becoming a cash cow again this year. Some really solid data, especially of late for John Collins. You see he's cashed this line in 8 of his last 10 games. That is an 80% hit rate, averaging 27.8 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over his last 10 games. Even if you go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view for John Collins, really good numbers, an 82% hit rate on this over, 27 out of 33 games he's cashed it, averaging 28.64 points plus rebounds plus assists per game overall this year. And even from a head-to-head perspective, the data is pretty solid. He's cashed the over in 3 of his last 5 meetings against the Los Angeles Lakers. That is a 60% hit rate. He's averaging 27.6 points plus rebounds plus assists per game across those previous 5 meetings against the Lakers. He's faced LA 2 times this year, back on November 19th and then again on December 1st. He's cashed the over both times he's played the Lakers this season. So really across the board, the data is fantastic, and the Lakers defensively right now are a bit of a mess. Luka might make his debut today. He hasn't played his first game as a Laker yet. He might make his debut tonight, but obviously the Mark Williams trade got rescinded. So this Lakers team is a little bit of a mess right now. Defensively, especially down low, I have a lot of question marks with this team. And again, he already cashed it twice this year playing the Lakers, so I'm not really too concerned about the numbers. Overall, the Lakers, they rank okay versus power forwards, 12th in points allowed, 16th in assists, 4th in rebounds. Collins does play some minutes at the 3 spot as well. Versus small forwards, the numbers are a little bit better here, 17th in points, 20th in rebounds, and 23rd in assists. But overall, I think we got a really good matchup on our hands here for John Collins. And for minus 120 odds, too, over on BetMGM, you can't really go wrong with that. And one last data point before we move on, guys. The insights provided by Outlier. John Collins has exceeded 24.5 points plus rebounds plus assists in 11 straight games versus bottom 10 defenses for assists allowed. He's averaging a whopping 31.8 points plus rebounds plus assists per game across those previous 11 games against teams who are bottom 10 overall in assists allowed. And the Lakers 23rd in assists allowed in the NBA to opposing teams. So really good numbers here for John Collins. Love this player prop. All right, guys, in our 4th and final single bet in today's video, sticking with this Jazz-Lakers game, 10:30 p.m. tip-off, we're going LeBron James of the Lakers over 7.5 assists, which we're getting for minus 115 odds over on DraftKings. Look, the data is really good across the board. Really good matchup. This is a recipe for a cash here for LeBron. Look at the last 10 game data first. He's cashed this over in 9 of his last 10 games. That's a 90% hit rate, averaging 9.9 assists per game over his last 10 games. Really good numbers. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the last 20 games. Still a 90% hit rate. 18 of his last 20 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 9.25 assists per game over his last 20 games. Stretched out to the entire season view for LeBron. Still really good numbers. 74% hit rate. 34 out of 46 games, he's cashed the over. He's averaging 9.04 assists per game overall this year. So really good numbers for LeBron. Even when you go ahead and look at the head-to-head department here, he's cashed the over in each of his previous 3 matchups against the Utah Jazz, including both times he's played Utah this year. The last time they played on December 1st, he had 14 assists. The previous matchup on November 19th, he had 12 assists. And look down below at the potential assist numbers. The last time they played, now we don't have the numbers for potential assists for that November 19th matchup against Utah, but for that December 1st, their most recent matchup, almost a little over 2 months ago, he had 25 potential assists in that game and finished with 14 assists. LeBron also did not play on Saturday, so he's on a little bit of an extended rest here. You see the last time he played was back on February 6th against the Warriors, where he had 8 assists. And again, we have the matchup here. The overall numbers for the Utah Jazz, they are 27th in the NBA in assists allowed to opposing teams, giving up 28.8 assists per game to opposing teams. LeBron, again, kind of tricky because you don't really know what his real position is. He's more of a point forward versus small forwards. They're 23rd. Power forwards, they're 11th, a little bit better, but, you know, again, his role within the team is a little bit strange. You can't really give LeBron a position here. Again, he's technically a small forward, but, again, he plays power forward, he plays the 3, the 4, he's more of a point forward, he runs the offense. The way LeBron fits in this team is definitely different. Honestly, I'm surprised. I thought this line would be a little bit higher. I think because Luka probably will make his debut in this game, people are questioning how this offense is going to work. Is LeBron going to be the more ball-dominant one? Is it going to be Luka? I think that with Luka playing, LeBron will have plenty of assist opportunities because he'll be able to set Luka up. The other really big concern here is obviously the Lakers could blow the Jazz out and then LeBron doesn't play a ton of minutes. But the fact that LeBron hasn't played in almost 4 days, or definitely over 3 days since February 6th, he'll probably play in the ballpark of 30 minutes in this game. He is pretty well rested coming into this matchup. The Luka stuff aside, the data is solid across the board here. Love the spot here for LeBron, over 7.5 assists over on DraftKings for minus 115 odds. All right, guys, so those are all 4 single bets in today's video. We now move on to close out this video with a 3-leg parlay over on FanDuel. Right now, at this very point in time, it's plus 201 odds over on FanDuel. So pretty good value for a 3-leg parlay here. Our first leg of our 3-leg parlay, we're targeting the Hornets-Nets game, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. We're going Cam Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets over 14.5 points in this game. These are all alternate lines. We're getting this alternate line for minus 260 over on FanDuel. And obviously, with this being an alternate line, the data is going to be pretty solid. Cam Johnson has cashed this over in 9 of his last 10 games. That is a 90% hit rate, averaging 19.7 points per game over his last 10 games. Look at the overall season numbers for Cam Johnson. A 70% hit rate on this over. 26 out of 37 games he's cashed it, averaging 19.3 points per game this season. And from a head-to-head category, you see each of his previous 2 matchups against the Charlotte Hornets, he's cashed the over. That's a 100% hit rate. His last time out, which actually took place this season back on November 19th, he had a massive performance, 34 points, and was a narrow 1-point victory for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, Cam Johnson really hasn't played a ton over the last month or so. Looking back January 14th, he's only played 5 games since January 14th. He has cashed the over in each and every one of those games. February 5th, the most recent 2 games he's played, he did cash the over versus Washington and versus Miami. Now that he didn't get traded, I feel like he can just kind of focus on his game and playing and maximizing his value. I do think Brooklyn will still probably eventually move him, maybe in the offseason or maybe even next trade deadline. But obviously, Cam Johnson, now that he's no longer being traded, he knows he's going to be in Brooklyn the rest of the year. He can just sort of lock in. And he has been playing pretty well since returning these last couple of games. And versus power forwards, the Charlotte Hornets this year, they are 21st in the NBA in terms of points allowed, giving up 23.8 points per game to power forwards. Cam Johnson does play a little bit at the 3, and even versus the 3, they ranked 11th, but still 20.2 points per game on average. We only need him to score 15 points in this matchup. He's done it each of the previous 2. I like the spot for Cam Johnson for the first leg of our 3-leg parlay. By the way, guys, if you are still watching this video at this point, please go ahead and comment 17 down below. We're about to hit the 17-minute mark in today's video. As always, guys, I appreciate those who watch all the way through. We put a lot of hard work into each and every single one of the videos here on the channel. So those who do actually watch through the videos and don't just jump to the pinned comment for the picks, we appreciate you guys a lot. So go ahead and comment 17 down below if you are still watching at this point in today's video. All right, guys, our second leg of our 3-leg parlay, we're looking at the Pelicans-Thunder game, 8 p.m. tip-off. We're going SGA of the Thunder over 29.5 points. Again, alternate line, minus 175 over on FanDuel. And again, the data is pretty solid. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over. That's a 70% hit rate. He's averaging almost 37 points per game over his last 10 games. Stretch the data out to the entire season view, a 61% hit rate on this over this year for SGA. 31 out of 51 games, he's cashed the over. He's averaging 32.43 points per game this season. However, narrow the data back down to the last 20-game view. Really good numbers. 75% hit rate. 15 of his last 20 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 35.4 points per game across his previous 20 games. And like we mentioned with that Garland prop, the very first prop in this video, even when he misses, he's very, very close. 29 points, 27, 27, 29. 25 points is the lowest scoring total he's had over the last 20 games. SGA is having a crazy season. Now, from a head-to-head perspective, it's actually kind of interesting. The head-to-head data is not great. He's only cashed the over in 3 of his previous 9 meetings against the Pelicans, just a 33% hit rate, averaging 27.11 points per game across the previous 9 matchups with the Pelicans. That does include, of course, the playoff series from last year. If we do just narrow it down, though, to this season's data, he's played them 2 times this year, back on November 13th, where he just barely missed the mark with 29 points in that game. And then their most recent matchup back on December 7th, he did cash the over with 31 points. So he's averaging 30 points per game against the Pelicans this season. And it makes sense. The Pelicans overall 26th in the NBA in points allowed, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And versus point guards, they rank 25th in the NBA in points allowed, giving up 25.7 points per game. We've seen it all year long. Even if this game does become a blowout, which is very possible, I still think the SGA will get his numbers, will get his points. So I like the over here for the second leg of our 3-leg parlay. And then our final pick in today's video, guys, the third leg in our 3-leg parlay. We're going back to that Kings-Mavericks game, 8:30 p.m. tip-off. We're going Domantas Sabonis of the Kings over 11.5 rebounds, minus 260 over on FanDuel here. And the numbers, pretty good, of course, being an alternate line. He's cashed the over in 8 of his last 10 games. It's an 80% hit rate, averaging 14.7 rebounds per game over his last 10 games. You want to go ahead and stretch the data out to the last 20 games. Still, 80% hit rate, 16 of his last 20. He's cashed the over, averaging 15.5 rebounds per game over his last 20 games. Go ahead and stretch the data out even further to the entire season view. An 80% hit rate this year for Sabonis, 39 out of 49 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 14.31 rebounds per game this year. So 80, 80, 80. You look at the last 10 game, the last 20 game, and the season view, 80% hit rate in all three of those categories. And from a head-to-head perspective, he's cashed the over in 3 of his previous 5 meetings against the Dallas Mavericks. That is a 60% hit rate, averaging 12.6 rebounds per game across the previous 5 matchups against the Dallas Mavericks. They have played just once this year back on December 30th. He had 16 rebounds in that game, so a lot of opportunities. He had, for rebound chances, 28 rebound chances in that game. So plenty of opportunities here for Sabonis. He is averaging 21.6 rebound chances per game across those previous 5 matchups. So it does look like we got a pretty good player prop on our hands here. And versus centers this year, the Mavericks 22nd in the NBA in rebounds allowed to centers, giving up 13.1 rebounds per game. Obviously, we know Anthony Davis out for a while. Derek Lively is out. Dwight Powell is out. They basically have Gafford, and that's it for centers. So they're very thin right now on centers, and I think Sabonis could definitely eat in this matchup specifically versus Gafford. So for him to get 12 rebounds, you look at the head-to-head matchup one more time here from the head-to-head data. Even the 2 times he missed the numbers, he still had 11 rebounds in those games. He missed it by 1. So I think we got a pretty good player prop on our hands here for the third and final leg of today's parlay. And again, guys, that is a 3-leg parlay for plus 201 odds over on FanDuel. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. One more time, as always, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. We'll be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video, but until then, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Monday. Have a fantastic start to the week. Let's go ahead and make some money.